Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to our Let's Talk Alberta event in beautiful Beiseker. As you can see, I hadn't planned emceeing for tonight. Otherwise, I would have been dressed a little bit differently, but that's okay. It's a beautiful day outside, and I would argue it's shorts weather anyway. Before we get going, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping things. It appears to me as though we have some exits in the building. They seem to have illuminated exit signs above them. There's one over here, one in the back where we came from. So if something happens and we need to vacate, there's lots of places to go, so just do so in an orderly fashion. I've also visited the lavatory, which is in the hallway down there. They're very clean and beautiful, so don't be shy if you need to use them. They are. With that said, I want to let you all know why Let's Talk Alberta exists and why we're here in Beiseker tonight. Before I do that, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Christopher Scott, and I'm the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe in Alberta, and I'm question that's that significant, we should talk about it before we decide what our answer is going to be. So tonight, you're going to hear from 3 presenters, one of which is not me, and they're going to share their opinions with you as to what they believe is the best and most viable path for Alberta. My friend Cory Morgan, who is also a third-party advertiser, he's got a table over there, and he'd be happy to explain some of those things. My friend Benoit Trudeau, he has an in-depth knowledge of Quebec and how the referendum worked in Quebec, and some of the things that Quebec has done to become a sovereign Quebec within the United Canada. And then my friend John Riel, he is old. So old that he knows just about everything by now. I don't know if there's any more room for him to learn any more things. All joking aside, John has some very significant experience in Alberta politics, specifically thinking about and pursuing Alberta sovereignty. He is a veteran serviceman, and he has served Alberta and served Canada, and now he has some things to share from that perspective. So I'm very grateful that you're here. I'm very grateful that the presenters are here, and I hope that the information that you hear tonight will, at the very least, make you ask some more questions, specifically of those who have different opinions than you. One of our goals here, and it's a difficult one because we tend to congregate with people who share our opinions, share our views, and think it's right. We would like nothing more than to have our events filled with people who disagree with my personal opinion that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. I would like people to challenge me on my opinions and my ideas. I'd like them to ask me questions, and I'd like to ask them some questions as well. And in doing so, in talking to each other, instead of ignoring and canceling, we stand to achieve the best possible outcomes for Alberta, for Albertans, and for even some Albertans that are yet to be born, who are probably going to either reap the benefits or face the consequences for our decisions going forward. So, without further ado, and because I'm also the sound guy and I need to make sure that's working, who's first? Ben, you want to go first? Okay, well, Ben is going to do double duty tonight because one of the other things that we stand for in Let's Talk Alberta are the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom. And because we stand for those things, we tend to open our meetings or close our meetings with those things there because, we believe in something higher than ourselves, and we look to guidance that we couldn't possibly have as human beings to help us in our journey. So, Ben, if you would mind opening prayer before you start.
Well, thank you for this gathering tonight. Thank you for those who are here. Hours. Everybody tonight and protection of this province. And us to be able to So, well, good evening. So my name is Ben Trudeau. Yes, I'm related 14 generations to a man called Etienne Trudeau in Montreal. He was hired by the King of France to build the city in 1648. And the infamous Trudeau comes from the oldest of the 6 kids, 6th son that he had. I come from the second one. So I was born and raised in Montreal. I was raised in a very political family, not because of my name, but because of the job that my dad was doing. My dad is a speechwriter, a PR guy, worked for all premiers of Quebec since the 70s, and made a couple of functions as well for a lot of prime ministers. So I was raised in a very political environment as well. One of my fondest memory was during the 1976 Montreal Olympics on the big plaza with all the flags. I was 4 years old, holding my dad by the hand as he was talking to René Lévesque, who became premier a few months later. And the PQ coming in power was a big thing in Quebec. It was the conclusion of over 150 years of battles and civil war started in 1838 and 1836 between the French Canadian and the English powers that were taking and confiscating farms that had been farmed by French Canadians since the early 1600s. We often forget that Canada started in 1534 with New France, and that by the time the English won on the Plains of Abraham on September 13, 1759, the French has been farming that country land for over 200 years already. And then the king decided to start giving some land to the Americans who wanted to remain faithful to the king. So the French started losing their ancestral farm. And when I say ancestral, by the real term, a lot of farmhouse in Quebec along the Richelieu River and the St. Lawrence were built in the early 1600s. So they were already 150, 200 years old when the British Act was signed in 1769. I'm bringing back all that history because to be able to have a referendum on separation is not free, it's not granted. There was a lot of at least French Canadian that I know who died to get that right. In 1837, there was a rebellion of the Patriots because of that land grab by the authorities. And over 400 died in battles against the English army. At the end of that, the 12 leaders of the rebellion were hung in Montreal, and 100 were sent to Australia for their participation in that rebellion against the English. And then the English said, you know what, these French Catholic, they make way too much children, we'll never beat them by number, so we'll beat them by money. And by 1900, if you were living in Montreal, French Canadian, who were representing 94% of the population of the province, and you were living in Griffintown, which is near downtown Montreal, your life expectancy was 19 years old. And if you were French Canadian in 1900, you couldn't get a bank loan. Bank would not lend to French Canadians, and the contracts were only in English, and it was not well seen to trust a French Canadian to make a loan. So they started their own bank, a credit union named Desjardins. Probably many of you have Desjardins car insurance right now in your pocket. So Desjardins became the largest credit union in North America. They have 7.8 million Quebecers who have account at Desjardins out of 9 million population. So if you're a Quebecer, you have an account at Desjardins. And that, by the way, shield Quebec from any problem with the Canadian currency. Because let's say the Canadian currency collapsed tomorrow morning, Desjardins just have to say, you know what, for every Canadian dollar you have in your account, we will call them right now Desjardins dollar and keep on putting gas in your car, keep on buying, because everybody got an account at Desjardins. So this is how you build a resiliency, by keeping the money home. In 1957, because according to our constitution, the federal government, it's for provincial government to collect taxes. So, and the federal government started collecting taxes because of the war, and kept on collecting taxes after the war. So Duplessis in 54 said, you know what, we will collect taxes too. And for 3 years, the Quebecers paid twice the taxes. One to the provincial government, one to the federal government. And who lost? The federal government. Because they say we will never be able to win the next election if we keep on charging them double taxes. So then Quebec start taxing and collecting their taxes. 1957, only one tax to their citizen. And this is how the equalization appeared, because Louis Saint-Laurent was prime minister at the time, Quebecer, said, you know what, because Quebec is collecting its own taxes, it's not fair for the rest of the province, so we'll pick from their pocket. And they create the equalization program to make sure that there would be fairness in the country. Fast forward, of course, 6 years later, and the equalization program is working well for Quebec, but is working even better for the maritime provinces. So the largest benefactor of the equalization program in this country is PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. The equalization represents up to 26% of their provincial budget. The money we send to Quebec represents 8% of its provincial budget. So if Quebec will lose equalization tomorrow, they would probably say, excuse my French, but they will definitely keep on operating. It's not the same with New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. They would basically not able to operate. And this is why equalization was bundled in their patriation of the Constitution in 1982 by Trudeau. Trudeau did two things, two very, 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 very bad things to change the country we live in 1982. He created a charter, and then he included the equalization program in the Constitution. Until 1992, the equalization program was only a law in Ottawa, so it could have been repealed anytime, just on a Tuesday morning, you say, okay, no more equalization. We cannot do that anymore, because Trudeau, by doing that, created welfare provinces. He made sure that the only way to change the Constitution in this province, on very fundamental principle, is to have 7 provinces representing 50% of the population. We have 10 provinces. By creating 3 welfare provinces that depend on that program to operate, he made sure that the Constitution was locked down with the key through at the sea. So our Constitution cannot be changed. It's a lure to think that we can change that Constitution. So because it cannot be changed, this is why Quebec wanted to separate. In 1995, during the referendum, I was part of a political party that we started in '94, a few months before. I was 22 years old, first batch of candidates. Our leader was elected. We gathered 7% of the vote. But that 7% represented the balance of power to get a yes in the province. So we were called by Parizeau, the premier, and Bouchard, the leader of the opposition in Ottawa, under the Bloc Québécois. And the question that was asked in the '95 referendum was coming from us, the youth, from us, our party, which was, do you give the mandate to the premier to negotiate a new deal with Ottawa? And if no, if the Ottawa doesn't want, then we separate. So it was a clutch question. It was not a referendum on separation. It was a referendum on negotiation. And that's a big difference, because that question triggered the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act came out after a judgment of the Supreme Court in '98, where Chrétien asked the Supreme Court, is a province can separate in Canada? And the Supreme Court said, yes, they can, under certain conditions. And then they added up a bunch of conditions, and they created the Clarity Act in 2000, enabling any province to separate if you can pass these 7 obstacles. So they created 7 gates, almost impossible to go through to separate. And now, what we're facing on October 19, our question is, do we, Albertan, want to start the process to use the Clarity Act to try to get out of the country? Perhaps. So this is what brought me to write that book about what Quebec did after the '95 referendum and since 1965. When Canada decided to create its own pension plan, Quebec say, we won't participate in it. We'll create our own. Well, 60 years later, after 1965, 60 years later, the Canada Pension Plan has an investment fund of $700 billion for 22 million insured. The Quebec Pension Fund has an investment fund of $500 billion for 6 million insured. So the Quebec Pension Fund was 3 times more performant than the Canada Pension Fund. The Quebec Pension Fund today owns more real estate in this province, Alberta, than the government of Alberta itself. They own the Cross Island Mill, they own the outlet at the Edmonton Airport, they own a bunch of towers here downtown Calgary, a bunch of towers downtown Edmonton. Why? Because they forced 30 to 40% of their money to stay in Canada, invest. And now that same pension fund build trains, build infrastructure for Quebec. So it's a very good example to follow for us if we want to create our own pension fund. So after writing my book and casting a vision, casting a plan for Alberta to basically be able to become sovereign under that constitution, which Quebec did. Do you know that Quebec has 38 embassies around the world? They call Maison du Québec, and they have one in Washington, in London, in Tokyo, in Paris, and so when you're a Quebecer and traveling abroad, you don't go to the Canadian embassy, you go to the Maison du Québec. And why do they do down there? They close economic deal, because again, according to the constitution, it's for the province to close its economical deal. And once you have your deal closed, they cannot transfer it to treaty. The treaties are federal competence. But what do you think happens with Quebec? Once they close their deal with Germany, once they close the deal with the France, when they close the deal with the South Korean, when they close it, they pick up the phone, call Ottawa and say, okay, come and sign now. And that's what Ottawa does. We can do that. So following that, because of all that I was seeing that Alberta can do and is not doing, and I still sometimes wondering why we are not doing. I wrote these little booklets on specific topics. And so my book Enough tells you broadly about the situation, give a solution and a pathway to become sovereign, really sovereign, controlling our immigration, getting our own money. Do you know that all the royalties of the province is deposited at the CIBC in Toronto every Friday afternoon? So Toronto makes every week on the CIBC headquartered in Toronto make every week about $2-3 million with just floating Alberta cash during the weekend. If we would collect our taxes alone instead of CRA, we would get, so right now the way it works, big corporations in Alberta have 72 hours to remit their remittance after giving you a paycheck. And Ottawa has 2 years to bring back that money at the rhythm they choose to do and the way they choose to do it. So if we would just collect our own taxes, we would get $600 million more just in interest on that float. So I wrote that book on equalization to say, no, Quebec shields $7 billion a year from the equalization calculation, $3.5 billion because it's half of it. And so they get $3.5 billion per year of equalization more than what they should just by shielding certain resource. That's part of a calculation. Well, we can do the same. So I wrote in that book, how can Alberta do the same? In this one about the Canada Pension Plan, well, I wrote, how can we manage our own pension plan in a way efficient way than Canada does? Canada Revenue Agency. How can we keep here that $600 billion of interest that Ottawa makes, plus they control all the lever when they have to negotiate? Then this one, the last one, I call it paycheck politics. So we leave on the table $1.5 billion more of EI payment than what we receive. Meanwhile, in 1996, Alberta signed, December 1996, Alberta signed a deal with Ottawa on EI. And Quebec looked at that deal and said, oh, that's a good deal. We'll sign the same. So Quebec signed the exact same document 3 months later. Not a difference with a word between the two documents. Quebec took that document and said, okay, let's do the maximum we can do with that. Because of that document that Alberta signed, they get $500 million more than us because we're not using the own document that we have. So it's time, I'm telling you, the real problem, it's in our political class. It's time for a wake-up call from a politician. Because if we just deal, out of the $30 billion we leave at the table, if we just deal with the 8 biggest money suckers, the 8 stuff that leaves the most money at the table, we can reduce it within a year to $8 billion. So we can get back $22 billion more. $22 billion is a quarter of our budget. So my message tonight is it's very important that everybody, most people go vote on October 19. It's very important that we do not vote for status quo. It's very important that we send a message that we need to move towards being sovereign, and we need to work for ourselves, and we need to stop being apathic with our money. We need to keep our money here. We need to collect our money here. We need to police ourselves. We need to send strong messages that it's enough. And we're not doing that right now. So, you know what? The 1995 referendum in Quebec was lost by 53,000 votes out of 4 million votes casted. And you know why we did accepted that result? Because we had 95% participation rate to that referendum. There are some polls in Montreal that at 6 p.m. they were empty because 100% went to vote. So when you have that type of participation and you have a result like that, you can accept it. When you have a participation at 30%, 40% of the population, and you get a result like that, you cannot accept it. So my call tonight is to ask you to make sure that you, your neighbor, everybody that can talk, go vote on October 19. Because there's people down east, the one that Alberta always talk against, there's over 500 of them that died for us to get that privilege today. So let's respect them, let's respect our country, let's respect the democratic opportunity that is presented to us. So, and on that, I will call the next one. Yeah, you, John. So, yeah, so I'll call my friend John to come. So John has a wealth of experience in the province, had his own, was leading a political party, requesting a lot of things that I wrote in these books and all that. And I came to know him during that tour, and I really like his approach. He's very level-headed, despite being very enthusiastic for Alberta sovereignty. So.
Thank you so much, Ben. One of the things that I've learned in traveling and speaking in conjunction with Ben Trudeau is I've learned to respect Quebec's position in Canada. And the reason I respect that position is because everything they've done has been done in accordance with the Canadian Constitution. Everything they've done has been lawful, has been legal, and has been beneficial to Quebec. And the reason that everything they've done has been beneficial to Quebec is because they have provincial politicians and a group of federal politicians, the Bloc Québécois, whose sole purpose is to look after the interests of Quebec. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history of myself. I'm old, okay? That's where I started. I mean, Chris said I'm old. Ben said I'm old. I'm old. But that's not a bad thing, because 25, 26, 27 years ago, we started a political party called the Alberta First Party. The basic premise of the Alberta First Party was to get the federal government out of Alberta's business, to allow Alberta to function with the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that were Alberta's in the Constitution of Canada without interference from Ottawa. That was our sole objective. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound anything like I want a sovereign Alberta within the United Canada? Anybody heard that before? That's what we wanted. That was 26, 27 years ago. Cory will remember. I would ask you, do we have it? Has anything changed? So here's my position now. I'm now a little irritated. I used to be, like Ben said, I used to be level-headed, calm, and without too much excitement in life because, as I said, I'm old. Now I'm cranky, which goes with being old, I'm told. We have, in the province of Alberta, a whack of people sitting in Edmonton as MLAs. We have cabinet ministers, and we have a premier. none of whom adequately or enthusiastically represent the interests and wishes and desires of the people who elected them. Not one of them. And I say that because I have a lot of respect for Danielle Smith, although I don't have as much as I had 4 or 5 years ago. She talks about a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, and she has done absolutely nothing to further that objective. As a matter of fact, in talking with Ben earlier on this evening, he pointed out that the very first bill that was passed in the Alberta legislature when Danielle Smith became premier was Bill 2, which ended up requiring a referendum to have an Alberta pension plan. Up until that point, the only thing required to have an Alberta pension plan was a memorandum written to the CPP saying we're getting out. So she did she put a block in front of an Alberta pension plan. Then let's talk about the federal government for a little bit. The Supreme Court of Canada said that provinces have a right to negotiate their independence from Canada. And when you think about the BNA Act, if anybody's ever read the BNA, I know I said act twice that way, but Canada's supposed to be an association of equals. By that I mean the provincial governments are equal one to another, and they are also equal to the federal government. The federal government is not the boss of the provinces and under our Constitution. We have different responsibilities in that Constitution, but we are equals. Does anybody realize that that's the way we operate now? Of course not. We are subservient. When I listened to Danielle Smith talk about the federal government, I have this image in the back of my mind of Premier Smith going to Ottawa, getting down on one knee, bowing her head and saying, "Please, may I have a pipeline?" And I can see the king saying, "Yes, we can do that for you. Let me sort it out for you. I'll go talk to BC and we'll get you a pipeline." So he goes and talks to BC. And he says to Premier Eadie in BC, "We want to put a twin down the TMX line and send some oil out to the rest of the world." And Premier Eadie says, "Sure, but I want something for it." And our beloved Prime Minister says, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm more than willing to share Alberta's royalties with you." And the reason he's willing to share Alberta's royalties with British Columbia is because if we charge extra to pay something to BC, then the people who own the oil, which is the companies that pull it out of the ground, won't use the pipeline because it's too dang expensive. So who pays for the transport of oil from Alberta to the coast? You do. We do. Our tax dollars do. So that's just a couple of things that irritate me. So here's what I want. This is my personal opinion and my personal desire. I want a premier whose 100% focus is on Alberta and Albertans. We have 342 people sitting behind desks in Ottawa collecting pensions and a whole boatload of money whose priority is to look after Canada. The people we have in Edmonton are supposed to look after us. I want a premier who's focused totally and completely on the desires, objectives, goals, and people of Alberta. That's what I want. And I want the number of people who sit in the legislature, I don't care whether they're NDP or whether they're Liberal or UCP, I want them to be focused on the needs, desires, and wants of the people who elected them. Those are Albertans. We don't have that. That's what I want. Now, I don't know how we're going to get that, but one way we can start to get that, we can let the government of Alberta and the government of Canada know this coming fall how we feel about the way things are right now by voting option 2 on the question regarding Alberta independence. That doesn't get us independence. What it does get us is on the road towards getting it. And then when it comes time for our beloved provincial government to come and say to you, we've got an election coming this year, And what I want to do is I want to sort of put aside this independence thing for a little while, because the boogeyman out there, whose name is Nenshi, doesn't that sound like a boogeyman to you? There's a boogeyman out there, and if we don't come together and unite under the Conservative banner, the NDP is going to run right up the middle, and you'll have Nenshi as a premier. And that's supposed to scare you to the point where you ignore the very idea that you want people in Edmonton representing Albertans. Is supposed to scare you to the point that you're more than willing to continue to vote for the status quo to save us from the dreaded NDP. Now, I've got a different perspective about that. If we let the NDP win in Alberta, Alberta's going to have a heck of a bad time. Is that correct? So what I would say to the UCP is, look after the people who support you. Look after the people who've elected you. If you don't do that, we'll vote for somebody else. I don't care who it is. It could be a purple party or a new separatist party or what. We'll vote for them and not you. And they say to me, but if you do that, the NDP will win. And I said, yes, they will. And it's your fault. It's not my fault. I'm not going to vote for somebody who doesn't do what I want them to do. So we may be, if that ever happened, and I hope to heaven it doesn't, then it won't be our fault, but maybe the next 4 years of NDP government will finally convince the UCP that they've got to get off the pot and start doing what we want them to do. That's just my thought. Now, I have often thought, when I talk on these circuits, I talk about economics a little bit. And Ben said that Quebec gets a little bit of, they only get 8.7% of their budget from the equalization program. I want you to understand that 8.7% is $13.93 billion a year. Now, yes, the Maritimes get between 21 and 26% of their budgets from the equalization plan, but that doesn't come anywhere near to $13 billion. And there's something else you may or may not realize. There are 7 provinces in Canada that collect from the Equalization Fund. One of them is Manitoba. They get $5 billion a year, $6 billion, I think. I can't remember exactly how much, but they get lots. And when you look at the total amount of equalization shared by those who receive equalization dollars against the total equalization dollars available, you have 7 provinces profiting from 3 provinces who don't get anything from equalization. That's British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. When you total up the actual value, the number of dollars that's distributed, you'll find out it's almost exactly equal to what Alberta pays in that's extra. So for Saskatchewan and British Columbia, it's a wash. But for you and me and our families, it's a lot of money coming out of our pockets every month. This has to change. And my plea to you is that you recognize the need for change. You recognize the need to vote for option 2 on the equalization, or pardon me, on the independence question in October. And that you tell everybody you know and everybody you talk to why it's absolutely necessary. I don't care whether you're a Forever Canada person or an Alberta independence person, that is absolutely necessary, because we have a history that goes back over 100 years of nothing changing. Nothing has changed in this province with its relationship to the central government in Canada in over 100 years. If we don't do anything different, what's the old saying? If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, you're insane. I would hate to think that Albertans are insane. I love Alberta. Now, just as an observation, I love Canada. I've served in the Canadian Army as a signals officer. I served in the RCAF as an integral systems technician on guidance systems. I'm a former military guy. I love Canada. I want to save Canada. And I will tell you this, I've talked about this before to other people in greater detail. We have a group of provinces in Canada who live off our efforts. And that's fine. When you have family, you support each other, but you don't do it forever. So my suggestion to you folks is that the way we save the country we love and turn it back into the country it used to be is we leave. We force them to stand on their own 2 feet. We force them, rather than paying 26% of Prince Edward Island's budget, we make them find that 26% or reduce their expenditures. Rather than pay 21% of New Brunswick's budget, we force them to either find that 21% or cut their spending. And if they cut their spending and can't provide services, the net result of that will be the people who don't have jobs in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island will come to Alberta and go to work. No, they will. They do it. The Newfoundlanders, I mean, half of Fort McMurray is from Newfoundland. Great province. Love Newfoundlanders. I spent some time there. They're a rugged and independent people, and I love them to bits. Those are my thoughts. My hope for you is that you are desperate enough with the situation that we have now, that you're committed enough to the solution of that situation, that we take a page out of Quebec's book, we use the laws that are rightfully ours and that we have to do the things that we need to do, and we vote for the people who get that done, and we begin by voting option 2 on the independence referendum question in October of this year. That's my hope. I leave it with you, and I hope you do what you can to get her done, because it depends on you. Now you get the cream of the crop, Cory Morgan. I've heard this man speak before. He is both eloquent and knowledgeable. And if he doesn't inspire you with what he has to say, then there's something wrong with you, because he has a wealth of information. He's a marvelous speaker, and the thing I like about the things that he says is they're all true. They're all designed to help. There's not an uncharitable bone in this man's body. Everything he says is designed to make Alberta a better place and Albertans a better people. And I appreciate him. I hope you will too.
Thank you very much, John. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm coming from land that was permanently, forever, utterly surrendered and ceded under Treaty 7 a long time ago. It's privately owned by people who worked their asses off, and we got to work to protect it. I've kind of started things with that land acknowledgement thing before, but today I got a little wound up. I was in the newsroom. Our news editor, Dave, always has the big TV on, and the press conferences are on there. And we watched live that one up in Red Deer today with the Prime Minister and Premier Smith. So I had to sit there clenching my teeth at my desk and seeing that, because they started with what had to be a 3-minute groveling, sniveling acknowledgement about why we are such worthless people on this land that was stolen. I mean, I'm interpreting, I'm paraphrasing, but that's how these things start. It starts with abasement. It starts with an apology. It starts with saying, I'm sorry for what happened a couple hundred years ago. Please allow us to continue to do what we're doing. And it's just started the whole conference off by demonstrating to all of us who have a quarter of a brain looking at it that this country is broken. And that's a symptom of it, a huge one. And then it got worse. Then the politicians started to speak. So, credit due, Will Vassar, Western Standard reporter, asked about equalization. They were there to pat each other on the back over a federal announcement for a housing project, which is way out of federal jurisdiction anyways. People aren't reading between the lines of what just happened in Red Deer. What happened in Red Deer was the federal government just gave us another strings attached bunch of money to tie us to Ottawa even further on something that's not in their bloody jurisdiction. And Smith grinning saying, look what I got us. God, I'm getting frustrated with her. And I don't want to be. I've been a very strong supporter, and I've taken a lot of abuse for being as supportive of as I have for Premier Smith in this last 6 months, and I'm out of excuses for her anymore. And I expected so much more. But she was asked about equalization, and then she gave the long rambling answer about, well, you know, maybe we can tweak it to adjust the formula so we don't get punished so badly for working and having extra money. And again, I'm paraphrasing. That's pretty much what she said. One of the few things Jason Kenney did, at least he threw it to a referendum for equalization. Again, that was just a big poll of Albertans, really, but that's fine. 62% of Albertans got up and said, we want it gone. She has a mandate. That wasn't that long ago. Alberta voters said, we want it gone. I understand that it would take constitutional change. I understand the chances of seven provinces with 50% of the population saying that we're going to get rid of equalization is right up there when pigs are going to fly. But the Premier's mandate is to stand there and say, well, Albertans have given me a mandate to completely oppose equalization. I would like and hope we can negotiate a better deal in the meantime, I guess, because it's punishing Albertans, but we can't fix that broken thing. Instead, she gave a sniveling thing that was worthy of a Liberal, while she was standing hand in hand again with the Liberal. I'm getting tired of what is going on. What has Carney got on her? She grinned while nationalizing a pipeline. What happened? It was only a few months ago when Premier Smith said, if we have to use tax dollars to build a pipeline, we failed. And now she's saying we succeeded. How? Well, because we're going to spend tens of billions of dollars on a pipeline that may never get in the ground. See, I'm ranting a little more than usual because I'm frustrated with spinning our wheels, doing the same thing over and over again. As John pointed out, I've been involved in politics for a long time. When he talked about the vote split, the boogeyman, the Nenshi, and Nenshi is a boogeyman, I don't want that weird man being our premier. But as John said, that responsibility to keep him out is hers, and ours to hold the provincial government accountable. I was on the provincial executive with the Wild Rose when Smith crossed the floor. Quite the mess, quite the betrayal. I managed Prasad Panda's campaign into that dire election when the NDP did get elected. But whose fault was that? What they had was two conservative parties that made themselves so odious that the province would rather elect an NDP government than vote for either of them. So whose fault is that? Well, it's our own bloody fault. We let that turn into a bloody mess because we didn't hold our politicians accountable enough to make a palatable, proper conservative party. So the time is going to have to come to remind Premier Smith and the rest of the UCP, yeah, if we get another bloody NDP government, it's on you. And that'll be the second time you did it, Danielle. In the meantime, we have a referendum approaching. And this is actually an area of optimism, though it really is. I've been at this a long time. I was 29 years old when I was wet behind the ears and running the AIP. Didn't know what the hell I was doing with the Alberta Independence Party, but we made some waves and then blew up like most conservative movements do. Learned a lot since then. Never in my life have I seen so much unity discussion as we've seen this year, though. This has been brilliant. Never have we seen so many Albertans actually having these conversations. Talking about the system, talking about the big picture, talking about whether it's worth it. It's not the poll numbers even that are up and down. You know, I'm sure there's periods in the 80s, if you hit the right poll with the Western Canada concept, there would have been points where there's higher committed support for independence than there might be today or yesterday. But there's never been such sustained discussion about our place as we've seen in this year. It's carrying on and it's continued. And we're going to see it keep happening. We've hit a tipping point, and it's a brilliant one. And going into this referendum, what's going to happen on October 20th? Nothing. It's going to look just like it did on October 19th. Whether we vote 5% for or whether we vote 80% for. I mean, it makes a difference. I'm not saying that, but the day after isn't going to look any different. And our mandate won't have changed either way. John and I kind of mentioned that off the side. Doesn't matter what comes out in this referendum. My goal is independence. If we vote 5% in that referendum or 80, I'm still pushing for independence. We didn't get the question to the direction we wanted. We shouldn't be that surprised. We should know they're going to throw every hurdle and roadblock and possible thing in front of us all the way till we become free. That's the way it's going to be. They're going to go kicking and screaming. So, you know, to use a tired old analogy, but it's a very good one. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So this referendum is one of those bites. It's a big one. There are going to be a lot of little bites and things too. But it's on us to get as strong a showing as possible in this referendum this fall. We must. We must show momentum. We must show that it's growing. We must show a large number of Albertans have gotten up and said, that's enough. We're moving on to the next step. And I know it's a winding, weird path to get there, but that's one of the steps towards it. We got to do it. And we can learn from our opponents what we must do. The status quo is freaking out. They see a risk here. They understand there is a movement building. They're understanding it's sustaining. They're scared. And they're trying to shut us down. They could ignore before. When it's something you're not afraid of, you can just ignore it. But that's part of the reason this has been at the front and center of the debate for this long. It's not just the people supporting it, it's the people opposing it. And in doing so, look what they're coming after. They're trying to shut down the discussion. Why? Because they can't win the discussion. The unions for Sobeys, United Food Workers Union. What have they gone after? Did you see that in the news? They've actually put in a grievance with Sobeys demanding that Alberta flags be removed from Sobeys stores. Just the flag. Because they had displays for local Alberta products and they stuck a little Alberta flag next to it. If I go in the Mexican food section, there's a little Mexican flag on the wall too. I don't get pissed off. But these guys are afraid. That's how terrified they are of seeing something form and grow. They're attacking our signs. That's been a lot of what my portion among the many TPAs out there do. I've just kind of been the sign guy, the sign specialist. In Calgary, 1 in 5 signs are pretty much getting stolen within a week off of lawns. And so many people are saying after I've given them a second one, or I'm not putting another one out, I'm worried. Then they're winning. That's what we can't let happen. We can't let people be afraid to put them out. I heard from Heather, who's been just working her butt off getting signs out in Calgary. She's amazing, a machine down there. But she did. She was contacting me, say, Cory, say on your videos, remind people you've got to put the sign out. She said she was hearing from a lot of people that they picked the sign up, but then they got home and actually lost the courage and they're keeping it in their house and they aren't putting it on the lawn. Why? Because, well, what do my neighbors think? Well, they'll think you're principled. There's more people out there supporting this than we realize. But as long as we let our opponents knock us into the closet, as long as we have them make us think it's shameful, that we should be embarrassed of it or afraid to show it, they'll win. So signs do make an impact. They don't change hearts and minds, but they open the discussion. That's what this is all about. Look at our opponents as well with this. How many, I don't know over the time, how many venues have been canceled when they're booked, and these guys find out there's going to be one of these, and they mass complain, and they chase us out of there. They're afraid of the discussion. If you're afraid of free speech, you're on the wrong side. It means you can't make your case. So we have to keep pushing. We have to keep talking, and the conversations have to go beyond these walls. And that's where we've got to open up wherever we can. As well in looking at our opponents. We look at Jason Kenney. And I like Jason Kenney. He's not the Kenney of the 90s that I liked a hell of a lot more. He's certainly not a Jason Kenney I ever want to see in office again. But one thing I'll say for him, he's a very smart political operator and a good communicator and a good strategist. So when you looked at him debating Keith Wilson, where did Jason Kenney go? He went straight for the heartstrings. He went straight for sentiment and emotion. Why? Because it works. Kenny could have run through all the figures, the numbers, the equalization, everything else. He knows those things better than probably I do. He could list them out. Very smart man. But instead, he went straight to talking about Memorial Drive in Calgary and the veterans and the people who fought the wars. Because it works. Because people will vote based on emotion. People will vote based on sentiment. And we can't dismiss those. Those are important to people. They're dearly held. In fact, if you get in somebody's face on an emotional issue, you're actually pushing them in the wrong direction. We can move people, but we've got to do it carefully. That's our job. That's what I can't do from up here on the stage. That's what I can't do when recording shows in the studio at the Western Standard or writing my columns. That's not what politicians can do. Because these cases, when people take it personally, when it's something heartfelt, the only way to move somebody is talking to somebody who they trust. And that's a friend, a family member. It's somebody you know. They need to look eye to eye with somebody and have that discussion. Sometimes it takes multiple discussions. This is a big decision we're moving towards for a lot of people. I like to remind people, again, when you go to those emotional discussions from Jason Kenney, we want to be respectful, because we should and we must be. I don't hate Canada. I certainly would never for a second think of disrespecting the veterans and the people who died before me. They allowed me to have a great life, a great upbringing in a peaceful, relatively prosperous country. But they happened to be with Canada when they fought. But what they were fighting for was freedom, not a particular constitution or country. And I like to think, and I'm certainly not nearly as courageous as them, but I'm carrying on the fight in a different way, that's all. I want to maintain the freedoms that they fought for, because incrementally we're watching them being eroded and stolen from us. This isn't what they wanted to see. Things change. Flags change. Constitutions change. That's just natural. And we want to make sure they change for the better. And we have that opportunity through this, through shaking it up. But again, we've got to have those conversations with people. We've got a big, giant, mushy middle. Something that Jason Kenney's advocacy group put out the other day was a poll that Legacy Media jumped all over and kept forgetting to mention. By the way, this poll was commissioned by an advocacy group, which you really should look for with a poll. Who did it and what was the methodology? We know who did it. It was a Federalist advocacy group. They still haven't released the methodology, which means we don't exactly know the questions, how they were framed, what the preambles were. There were a lot of things you can do with a poll. And I tell you what, that poll landed exactly where Jason Kenney would strategically like it to be, because it showed support for independence being in a minority, but still being strong enough to scare people. He could have tweaked that to have it look like it was 10% support, but then Federalists might stay home in the campaign. And he doesn't want it up at 48%, because that would just get everybody running around with their chickens like their heads cut off. 30%, that's a nice, scary number to make sure it's telling everybody to get off their butts and vote, but the world's not going to end. That was a number exactly like he wanted to see. But it also lets them know that voter turnout is going to be critical here. So we're all competing for those people who are undecided, and that's the mass. That's the 30% in the middle, whatever it might be. And we've got to have those conversations with people. We arm ourselves by having these conversations. We arm ourselves by being better able to discuss it, better able to answer those questions. But the other part, the final part, and we've only got a few months, is making sure they're inspired to get out and mark that ballot. In Quebec, the turnout for the referendum was 92%, I believe, 93, 95, and amazing. But that was a referendum that people considered would be the one that was do or die. This one's non-binding. So a lot of people aren't going to bother themselves with it. That could be to our advantage or disadvantage. I think that for the most part, it's to our advantage, because people who want change will get up and vote. People happy with the status quo are happy to sit at home. So we've got to motivate people. We've got to find them. We've got to identify them. We've got to move them over. We've got to get them out. We got 3 months to do it. But we can do it. We can do it. We just have to be strategic. We have to be tactical. We have to look for opportunities. We have to talk to people. We have to talk to our neighbor over the fence. Have to talk to that guy next to us in the bar. Have to stop wasting time talking to the ones who 100% say I'm a Federalist forever, and they're going to scream at you if you go into the discussion. It's okay. Don't waste your energy. Talk about sports or the weather with them. It's all right. Don't lose friendships and family members over this. But we are in a campaign. We don't have a political party. We don't have a René Lévesque. We have each other. And that's powerful. You got to remember, any well-organized campaign, even to the biggest political parties, what fundamentally comes down to the basis of it? It's banging on doors. You really do. You have to hit people one-on-one. When you get a candidate out there, you want to get that candidate face-to-face with as many voters as possible, even if it's just for 30 seconds, to shake their hand and look them in the eye and talk to them and be genuine, because that will have more impact than a million flyers or radio commercials or anything else. We don't have candidates. We have a movement. We're the representatives. But it's a great advantage, because you only get one candidate per constituency. We can have hundreds or thousands of our supporters going out in these constituencies helping move their friends and neighbors. We just have to take it on as our own role. We have to realize it's our job. And I think you guys know that already. That's why you came out tonight. There's a lot of things you could do in this kind of weather that are preferable to standing, sitting around here listening to me go off at you. So I appreciate that. And we have to, as this says, keep talking. We have to support Let's Talk Alberta. This is a brilliant initiative. It's one of the most important ones in Alberta, having the discussions, because only through discussions will people become better advocates, and people who aren't sure will make up their mind to make the right vote when the time comes. So I guess I'm the last speaker. It leaves it to me. I do have to point out as well, or is it going to go to Chris for a minute? Excellent. Okay, I will go to our MC. I've talked enough for now. What I'm looking forward to is the question and answer period, because that's where I get to learn, and I always do. There'll always be somebody hit me with a question I never thought of, and I'll have a better answer for it on the next one. So get your questions in mind. Let's have those conversations. I'm going to bring Chris up here, chat with you again for a minute, and then we'll talk a little while in the question and answers. So thank you very much, guys. Talk in a bit.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your opinions with us. Yes, I called you a gentleman, Cory.
Oh, yeah, I don't believe it, but I think your mic's on.
Is it on? It's on. I'm just not holding it close enough. I was actually going to just go straight to a break, but as I was sitting back there kind of watching what was going on in here, I noticed a couple things, and it made me, it motivated me to say just a few words, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. While I'm doing that, and I hate to do this to you, because I know that some of you want to just skedaddle so that you don't have the bucket pass in front of you during the next part of this in the Q&A, but this is all grassroots funded. We don't have money coming from Russia. Trump doesn't write us checks, none of those things. This isn't a foreign funded thing. This is Albertans who are supporting our desire to facilitate conversations across Alberta. At each of our events, we pass around these very intimidating looking buckets, and if people appreciate what we're doing and they want to help us, they throw a couple bucks in there. Please no chewing gum, that gets messy. And if you don't want to, you certainly don't have to, but it is your support that lets us continue doing this across Alberta, so thank you in advance. While we're doing that, and to keep you in your seats so that you don't leave before the bucket goes in front of you, I just want to share a thought with you. So tonight, some folks came to this particular meeting, and I got a vibe that maybe they weren't super happy about being here. Probably weren't, I don't think they like my shirt. I don't think they like all of the blue things we have over there, although we do set out some red and white things, they just don't happen to be there tonight. So I don't think they share my views. I don't think they share my opinion that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. And I was very, very happy to see them here. But they left before the Q&A. And I understand. A lot of times, we don't want to listen to people talking about things that we don't agree with. We don't want to listen to people sharing opinions that we find distasteful or maybe even vile. But what we're offering with Let's Talk Alberta, specifically to the people that do not agree with me, is an opportunity to either take the microphone and challenge our ideas, challenge my ideas, ask questions, those types of things, say their piece. If they're shy, then we give them an opportunity to write it on a piece of paper during the break, and someone will answer or ask the question to us for them. But that's what we want to do. We want the people that find the idea of an independent Alberta distasteful to come here and tell us why. And there's more reasons than you might think, and I'll tell you the most important one. I'm going to vote in October. I also have this interesting accidental following where people, for some reason, they know and remember my name. So when I go to a town or a city or whatever, people come there to listen to what I have to say. And what I have to say, my opinion, is that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. And I'm going to continue going to towns all across Alberta sharing my opinion, because that's my constitutional right. I'm also going to give people the opportunity to share their opinion with me and try and change my mind. Now, why would I want someone to change my mind? Well, I want to make the best decision in October. And if somebody can present a case to me for the status quo and explain to me why the status quo will benefit me and my family and my friends and my neighbors and heck, even my enemies, more than an independent Alberta, I want them to try and change my mind. Because I'm just a guy, I'm just a man. And I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, you need to tell me that I'm wrong. Convince me that I'm wrong. Otherwise, I'm going to continue going and sharing my opinions. And people will follow me. And they will follow me to the ballot box. Well, maybe not right to the ballot box. That would be weird. But you get what I'm saying. Each of us in this conversation, we need to become leaders. We need to be able to advocate for what we believe in. And if we're leaders, people will come with us. And when October rolls around, we're going to have a very large group of people who share the same opinions. They're going to vote in the same way. So if those that don't agree with us leave or stay home or don't engage in the conversation and try and advocate for their position, and they're right, a whole lot of us are going to make the wrong decision. And I don't believe it's the wrong decision, the way I'm going to vote currently today. But I admit that I am a human being and I'm fallible and I'm open to people challenging my ideas. That's what this is about. So I just wanted to mention that as I watched the folks leave. I just thought, what a missed opportunity for people that find my views distasteful to try and convince me why and bring me to their side. So that's what we want to happen. And I understand it's not easy and it takes a tremendous amount of courage to stand up in a room full of people who you know don't agree with you and say what you believe is true. I've had to do that lots. It's not comfortable, but this is the place to do it. And we certainly appreciate if you take the time to do so. Not just for you, but for us as well. And Jasper is madly pointing at the table back there that's full of beautiful blue merchandise that what did I design it? I guess I used AI to help and stuff. Anyway, we sell some stuff over there that allows you to wear your opinion. My friend Berta Proud Dad says, wear your opinion on your sleeve, unapologetically. Wear it boldly. Be a conversation starter. I see Alberta is starting to change the way they dress. I see lots of people dressed in blue. I see one or two people dressed in red and white, and they're wearing their opinions, and they're becoming a focal point for a conversation. And as long as we can do that respectfully, that's a really good thing. So please visit the tables, grab something to wear your opinion on your sleeve, and we'll meet you back here in 15 minutes tonight for the question and answer period, which is my favorite part of the evening. Thank you very much.
Life I know goes back 100 years, steeped in deep traditions of sweat and blood and tears. The value of hard work, common sense and hope and truth, the family and freedom, and the value of our youth. So what makes me want to hold on to what I know is right, and in the face of opposition, to stand my ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood and in my bones. It gets stronger every day. when somebody tries to move in and take it all away, I draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Yeah, it's living on the land, watching life come and go. It's working hard and playing hard, in sunshine and in snow. But we don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides. He's given us all the tools we need to enjoy this life and thrive. So what makes us wanna hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in our blood and in our bones. It gets stronger every day. When somebody tries to move it and take it all away, we just draw a line there in the sand, stand our ground and say, our Alberta roots, you can't hide them, they define us. They made us who we are today, and when life's this good, you just can't throw it away. Our Alberta roots run deep. You can't dig them out or pull them out. They go deeper every day. So when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, just draw your line there in the sand, stand your ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Run deep. Something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. When the front wheel starts to wobble, pull your truck on over. You might not be the only nut that's loose. You can't just ignore it or pretend that it's all fine. That shaky wheel is gonna cook your goose. And something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, don't claim to have the answers or the way to set back history's racing clock. But I know it's time to leave the couch, time to hit our knees, rebuild this country on a solid rock. Something's gotta change. Yeah, something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true with politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. You've heard that real insanity is to try the same thing over again. I wonder why you get the same results. There's got to be more options. There's got to be a way to bring this crazy train wreck to a halt. Something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. If it just ain't working, let's see what we can do. If it's broke, well, it needs a fix. Same is true in politics. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. Let's talk Alberta. It's up to me and you. To be brought here back in 1905. We were just fine, spending our time to mind our own business and thrive. But the East had different ideas. We were too good a deal to pass up. They saw what we had and they wanted it bad, so they signed us up there on the spot. They said, we'll call you Alberta, the land of big sky and big dreams. You do the work, we'll take the pay. That makes us the ultimate team. Yeah. Well, we realized that we was a peasant. This arrangement just couldn't go far. They said, you feed the cow, and we may allow you to take a small sip from the jar. Well, things just got worse as the time flew. The feds kept us stomping our necks. They take our pay, keep our assets at bay. The whole thing's become a big wreck. Say goodbye to old Alberta. Ain't nothing that's left of our dreams. We're told what to think. Election day stinks. They've taken out all of our means. We're at it, we've had it. We're just gonna move on and take back what's ours from the start. We ride a new horse and we'll chart a new course. Thank God that we're finally free. So raise a glass to Alberta, the land of big sky and big dreams. We're finally free to be who we should be and rid of the liberal schemes. So let's break the chains and be free again. Thank God we'll be finally free.
Okay, folks, we have one more awesome Alberta-themed song to play, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
money trees grow. Sweet home Alberta, rig pigs, cattle, and rodeo. Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow. Sweet home Alberta, rig pigs, cattle, and rodeo.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started with the speakers. I'm going to ask the speakers to come to the front. While they're coming to the front, I'm going to ask a couple of favors of you. The first favor is the algorithm plays havoc with us on social media. And so we get people telling us they get the poster for an event 3-4 days after the event has occurred. So if you could go to letstalkalberta.com, find the poster for upcoming events, share it to people that you may know in those areas, and ask them to share them with people that they may know. That's the way we're going to pass the word around. It's what I like to refer to as the shampoo method. Anybody that remembers the Clairol commercials from the 70s and 80s will remember you tell two friends, and they'll tell two friends, and so on and so on. And like I always say, I know lots about shampoo. The other favor is you'll notice a 4x8 sign back there. We also have 8x16 banners. If you know somebody on a major highway that can put one of those banners up or one of those signs up, that would be really, really good. Also, if you know somebody that is willing to sponsor one of these signs or the banners, these signs are around $50 each, and the banners are around $450 each to make. So any help that we can get in getting these all out across the province is greatly appreciated.
So who needs banner out?
Yeah, you in front of the table here. Just in front of the table here.
Yeah. It's actually about the right height.
There we go.
Now I can scratch myself.
The way you carried that across.
Well, is it this awkward?
Hello.
There you go.
I'm hiding in my little corner. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jasper. I'm here running the microphone. So, if you have any question, I will come up. Stick your hand up, and I will be there. If you have any hesitating by asking a question, come on over to Chris. He will write it down, and I will pronounce it for you. Perfect. I will go here by this gentleman.
You're Dutch. I doubt if it'll be pronounced
First of all, I'm glad you put this on tonight. I just happened to be looking on my website this afternoon. Hey, Beiseker, that's pretty close. So I'm from Calgary. Never been to one of these before, and I got two questions. One, my wife is not converted yet. How the heck do I convert someone as close to that just refuses to accept that this is the way to go? And two, there's a number of different parties within Alberta that are doing what you guys are doing right now, and it's a little confusing. And I'm not sure what the relationship is between all of them. Maybe you can explain that to me, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll have to go short with the wife thing. If I was good at those negotiations, I wouldn't be on my third one. But we've been together 19 years, though, so I kind of figured out some of it. Part of it is not trying to convince her of something she's not convinced of. But those are delicate conversations. It is a valid one, actually, when I talked a bit before about this is something we don't want to mess with relationships over or friendships and so on, too. If it's really incontrovertible, I don't know, in particular circumstance, your wife, sometimes it might be just better to let it go. Ease into the conversations. With reticent people, my advice in general, though, is start by asking them and let them work towards the conclusion. I use the analogy because I know Derek never watches these things anyways. My boss, Derek Fildebrand, and you know, when I go into I get a brilliant idea for a story or something we should do or whatever, and I burst into his office and say, look, we got to do this and this and this. It's yeah, Cory, go on, I'll get back to you later. But if I come in and talk around it and put bugs in his ear until it comes up as his idea, suddenly it's the most brilliant idea in the world and we got to do it right away. It's all in how you approach it. Let them come to the conclusion. It's not being deceptive, actually. It's letting somebody go through that same mental process of getting there. What are they concerned about in government? What are they concerned about with freedoms? And then all roads tend to lead to independence once people think about them long enough anyways. That's why the talking is important. But it's relationship by relationship. But I'll just be quick with the other groups. It's confusing. This is a unique campaign. We've never had a referendum like this. We don't have a political party representing really a side in this exactly. I mean, there's certainly a lean coming from the other parties. So it's up to a bunch of third-party advertisers to kind of take on that banner. That's where I started one, not really exactly with a lot of planning and intention. I just got tired of waiting for somebody else and fired it up, and it kind of took off on me. But I'm specializing in signs because we have a maximum of $600,000 per TPA that we can spend in this. And it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot for those of us in the real world. But in a political campaign, that's nothing for a party. They could spend millions. So I'm just taking on campaign signs. If I max out at 500,000 or whatever, hopefully I'll coat the province a bit. Other ones are taking different bites, and it can be a bit confusing because, well, what's this group saying over here? What's this group doing over here? But it's kind of what we have to work with. There's a bit of a centralized one that seems to be doing more with Keith Wilson, you know, and doing more formalized press releases. He's going to have policy papers, white papers, things like that coming out soon. I would suggest people go to Elections Alberta, and you can see the listing of all the third-party advertising groups, and there will be contact information. You know, just when you get some time, kind of check through them, and some might appeal to you and some might not, but most of them on the independent side are pretty clear, and we're kind of moving in the same direction. It's an opportunity because, like, political parties inherently have to compete with each other. I mean, they can be moving in the same direction, but eventually you're all going to run for the same seats at some point or another. Third-party advertisers don't. We actually can be all moving in the same direction. We can't collude, but we aren't competing either. So we can actually have a bunch of different disparate groups, yet still moving in the same direction. If we can pull it together in 3 months, it might be very, very successful. We'll see. But I would just suggest, I guess, you know, shopping around. But I'll give this to John here.
For your second question, I have a really, really simple, by simple I mean not complex answer. There are a number of groups that are dealing with this question throughout the province. They're all focused on the same thing. They're all focused on winning the referendum in October. They're not focused on winning a seat in the legislature. They're not focused on being the chief kid on the block. They're all focused on winning the referendum. As such, it doesn't matter that there's a lot of us. As a matter of fact, that's great because, like Cory says, third-party advertisers are restricted to an amount that they can actually spend in supporting a cause. The more of us they are, the more money can be spent and the more the message can get out. As far as your wife is concerned, I'm going to... Well, it's not that. I'm going to make a guess that her reasoning behind her Forever Canada position is emotional. I'm going to guess that it's patriotic. It has very little to do with the mechanics of the way the country is operating. So there's not much you can do about it. The emotional argument is the most difficult one to deal with because it's not subject to reason necessarily. So there's a couple of ways you could handle it if you wanted to take the risk, but I think I agree with Cory. Probably best to just leave it alone because you are dealing with emotion, not fact. The one thing I tell people, and my dad's a Second World War veteran, as another gentleman I was talking to is also a former signalman. He's the same kind of guy I am, only different. Served a lot more throughout the world than I did. But our soldiers didn't fight for Canada. There were no Germans or Japanese or anybody else in downtown Vancouver or in downtown Toronto trying to take over Canada. They weren't fighting for Canada. They were fighting for what Canadians believed. They were fighting for democracy, for freedom, freedom to express, freedom to speak, freedom to act, freedom to own. Those are the things that our veterans fought for. They didn't fight for a piece of real estate. They fought for ideals. And if you look around at what's going on in Canada right now, those ideals are under attack from every direction, in every direction, from one direction, from Ottawa. So I knew my dad pretty well. I loved that man. He was a great man. If he were alive and looking at what's happening in Canada right now, he would be absolutely disappointed. Not disgusted, disappointed that we have allowed our country and our goals, our objectives, our beliefs, our ethos, and our character to come under so much attack and do nothing about it. So I think that's the approach I would take with your wife, is that what she's fighting for doesn't really exist anymore. And what my dad and his dad and him through his service and I through mine to a lesser extent than him, what we fought for was what Canada was, could be, and should be in the future.
That's a good answer, John, because both her father and my father fought in World War II.
I would just add that something you could do is buy my book. It doesn't, I'm not a separatist, so I never been. I have the same constitutional position since I'm 14 years old. It's my fourth constitutional round right now, this campaign. The first one I was 8 years old, but I saw it from my dad. But the three others, Charlottetown, 1995, and now, I was very active in all three of them. So I invite you to buy it and maybe just to because the position I take in there, it's not an anti-Canadian position, it's a pro-Albertan position, and that's my take on it.
So I'm going to chime in just to clarify Let's Talk Alberta's position in all this. So Let's Talk Alberta is neither a party nor a third-party advertiser. We're not politicians. We're none of those things. We host people who want to talk about these issues, and we invite others to come and challenge them on their opinions, period. And you know, my opinion and most of our personal opinions are very apparent. I mean, we'll share our opinions boldly with you, but as an organization, our goal is to facilitate the conversation. That's it. So, you know, there are other groups. There's lots of third-party advertisers. Let me think if I can think of any. Forever Canadian, are they a third-party advertiser campaigning?
No, they can't be because they don't have to report their expenses. So
Weird. Anyway, there are people advertising on both sides of this conversation. We would prefer that everybody came to our events and talked about it and advocated for their position. So that's what Let's Talk Alberta is and why we exist.
So I've got a next question.
Hi, my name is Bernice, and I have a question with regards to that it comes up often when I'm talking about Alberta independence, and they say the first thing is, well, look what happened to Quebec right after the referendum, that they tanked their economy because of yada, yada, yada. How do you guys want to respond to that?
Okay, first it's false. What happened after in fact, it even started before the 1980 referendum. What happened from 1976 to 85 is that most headquarters left Quebec because of the linguistic policies and not the referendum itself. So in 1977, the PQ put up a rule, Bill 101, which forced all businesses to operate strictly in French if they are there, and this is where most of them left. It's because of linguistic stuff. By the way, Bill 101, just to tell you as well how Quebec act, we are at the 5th round at the Supreme Court on that legislation. So Quebec lost 4 times, 4 judgment from the Supreme Court. When they took the judgment, they look at the law, they modified some stuff and put back the law in place. So that's how Quebec deals with Supreme Court. Meanwhile, look how we deal with a local court of 33 people being able to shut down a petition of 200,000 people. This is the attitude that I'm talking about. But as for Quebec tanking, this is not true. It's not because of the referendum that it tanked. It's because of the language.
I'll just add a little more domestic and something to respond to people on that. And it's an outside source. RBC did a huge report that they put out in May. And they pointed out that in 10 years, there was over $1 trillion in estimated capital flight from Canada because of the horrific federal policies we have in this country. We're a bad place to invest, of which 70% were in the energy sector. So it's pretty hard to tell us that we're putting our economy at risk when we've seen such outright massive damage already with the status quo. It's difficult to believe anybody would leave any faster with an independence movement than they've already been doing under successive Liberal governments. So we would offer a more positive environment, I think, for investment upon independence rather than what's been offered so far.
Just to add a little bit to that, of our top 1% earners, how many of them have left Canada? 40%. 40% of our top 1% earners in Canada have left. What about our middle income workers, our tradesmen who are certified and qualified? How many of those have left? 30 to 50%. And you're worried about the economy tanking because of a referendum when we've lost 40% of our top earners, which means we've lost their tax money, and we've lost 30% of our qualified journeyman tradesmen to other countries and other opportunities, and along with their tax money, not just their tax money, but their expertise in construction, in creating infrastructure. And we're worried about tanking an economy after a referendum. How about the fact that the Carney's, what's it called, the company that he operates? No, what, Crookfield? Is that? They are hedging and selling short the Canadian dollar. Do you know what that means? They're selling Canadian dollars they don't own at prices that they will have to pay for that dollar in the future, which are less than the dollar's worth now. They are betting on the failure of the Canadian economy. Our own Prime Minister's baby, Crookfield Industries, whatever it's called, is betting on the failure of the Canadian economy. And we're worried about what might happen from a referendum. I'm afraid that I think that that's a distraction that we don't need.
Hello, my name is Woody. I have a concern with the Let's Talk Alberta flags. Now, if we're not, let's say you guys, whoever that organization is, if you're not a campaign third-party advertiser, can that go on public property like the Forever Canada I've seen in Calgary along John Laurier Boulevard and Brisbois Drive? Calgary on public property, and I'm wondering why can they get away with it and we have special laws to live under?
A couple of things. So the signs you've been seeing out there are put out by Stephen Carter's group, and they say no to the 9 and such on them. He put them out in the city of Calgary. What he did find, and actually Keith Wilson sent me a nice long email on that, he found a loophole. Lots of municipalities make it very specific in their legislation that you can utilize public lands for campaign signs during a campaign period. Most of the cities, like Edmonton, specifies it'll be 30 days before the vote. Calgary never actually says how long, so technically we began as soon as the order in council dropped for the referendum. So campaign signs can go on public land in Calgary right now. Let's Talk Alberta is not a third-party advertising group, as was said, so those wouldn't be campaign signs. So it would be like anybody else who isn't necessarily allowed, whether it's a window cleaning business or anything else. You see people, stick signs out, but they aren't supposed to, and the city will pick them up and take them away. Third-party advertising groups in Calgary now can put signs on public land, and there's a long bylaw about which boulevards you can't, and certain city parks and things. Let's Talk, as I said, can't. My group, Pathway to Independence, is a registered third-party advertiser, so I can put them on them. And then it's municipality by municipality. So a lot of them, it'll be more triggered. You'll really see them blossom 30 days before the election. And people will start using public space signs. So that's why you're seeing kind of that discrepancy right now.
So you put up your signs on public property, but not these ones, just
You can put up signs of third-party advertisers on Calgary public property now, not on public property anywhere else, until it hits that period in the campaign with that municipality that allows it. But that's specifically for political parties or registered advertising groups. Well, that would be during a general election. I would say it's the same legislation that covers both for campaigns.
what signs can we put up on public property? I guess I should just narrow it down to.
You can put signs up from third-party advertisers that are registered on public property. And I'll just say I've been reticent. I've got one out. It was just like a trial of 4x8 on public property in Calgary just to see if they wouldn't come after me because they've let Carter's go. And so far they've left ours alone. But this far ahead of voting day, I'm not big on putting them on public property anyways, because they tend to just eventually clutter things. They get vandalized a lot. You need somebody constantly watching them, and they turn into white noise to commuters. You know, the real symbol of a sign is when somebody puts it in front of their household or their farm or their business, because that's them saying, I endorse this concept. When it's put on public property, it's just another sign on public property. I think when you get closer to voting day, if you got extra signs, by all means, get them out there, but they have very limited impact.
I'd like to make just a little comment. Saw something on the internet the other day, which was really interesting. It was about a person who said that in a particular neighborhood, they found 7 Forever Canada signs and no Alberta signs. Turns out that there were 30 more houses on that block that didn't have any signs. And I heard somebody talk earlier today about people who get a sign, take it home, and they don't want their neighbors to know what they don't want conflict, but they say they take their sign and they put it in the house. So if there were 7 signs out of 30 or 40 houses on the block, how many of the other 30 houses are actually in favor of Alberta independence? I would wager a really hefty proportion of them. I don't think that, that group went door to door offering signs. And the The 7 signs that were there said, yes, I'll take one. The other 30 houses said, no, I don't want one. So, anyway, just an observation.
My name is Dennis. I live just a town over, Arikana. One of the, I'd encourage people to talk to people. I had a HelloFresh guy at my door the other day, and good guy to talk to, I thought. I had one of Cory's signs on the lawn already, and I said, so what are you going to vote on October 19? He says, what vote? And he wanted to talk about how Danielle Smith wasn't exempting on fuel tax and all this stuff. I said, you're barking up the wrong tree. I said, this is not a political issue here. We're talking about our future, our kids, and everything. You know what? 5 minutes later, he says he'll vote yes on October 19. He was obviously, I think, an NDPer, and he was probably a new immigrant, or newer, I should say. And so I thought that was cool. I said, tell your friends. And then the other thought or question I have is, after October 19, and then there's that UCP AGM coming up just a month later. How are you planning to rally and get your information out and share information of how to move forward and how to keep the UCP accountable?
I'll take a tip from Ben and plug my book. Because there is actually a whole chapter in the Sovereigntist Handbook, though, about how to operate within political parties. Because that's one of the things they don't teach us in school. They teach us a bit of the parliamentary system and elections and voting, but they never actually teach us that you can buy a membership and take part in policy formulation or choosing nominees or voting on the party executive or any of all those things. You don't learn any of that until actually it seems when you go out and join a party. The way to, so, I explain that in the book, I guess all the way from the constituency association level to the AGM. Some people have also said, and it should be cleared up, I mean, and I'm explaining these things, I'm not a member of any party. Though I certainly have my views that are quite strong, but it's just part of because I write for a number of publications. So I've got to be free to be able to rip the heck out of them when they screw up. And they do, often. You purchase that membership, you get involved, but some people are thinking we could remove, and I'm saying we as a paraphrasing, remove Premier Smith on the AGM when it's coming. No, there's no mechanism to remove her at that AGM. There's no leadership review that's required at that AGM, and there's no way you could do it through a motion at the floor or whatever else. So that's not what's going to happen, and that's not what can happen at that AGM. But what is going to happen is elections for the entire board of the executive of the party. It's half of them, I think, go up, every one of them. So half of them you could vote on those and check out who is running for those board positions, and that's the party mechanisms. And it's where you can interact with the MLAs. I'll give an inside tip. If you want to get dirt from your local MLA, go to the hospitality suites at an AGM and when they get 6 beers in. Because, boy, they love talking. And I'm serious. I mean, that's why when I go to, if you've seen them, I have to wear this giant yellow banner with a big thing that says media because they're worried I'll get next to one of their drunk MLAs and quote them, so they make sure they can't miss me. But the other part is getting involved in your constituency. It's the only way to hold them accountable is for us to be active and do it from within. So join your constituency, go to a meeting, even if you're a novice, it can feel intimidating. They're more than happy to have people get active and involved, and you really can have an impact. But they'll ignore member activity and things at times and often, but you just got to keep pushing, and you can make some change.
And that goes for any party.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Cory, isn't her leadership review up for review up this November? I thought it was.
No, it's not. That's what I mean. So people made it sound like that. She went through one 2 years ago. They've got internal party rules. They can't have a leadership review when a federal or a general election is pending. So there's going to be a general election less than a year from that AGM. So there won't be a leadership review at that time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
interesting that that same principle applies to the idea of Alberta independence, having a binding referendum on Alberta independence. Oh, we can't do that during an election year. So we can go ahead and vote yes in this coming fall. And what's going to happen is that along about the spring of next year, it's going to be, well, we're in an election year, and we really can't be concerned with this referendum because we're afraid of the NDP. If we start dividing ourselves as pro and anti-independence, the NDP is going to run up the middle, so we need to gather together, support the conservative movement in order to avoid an NDP government. And we'll just worry about the independence issue in a year or two. That's what's going to happen. And that's why it's so important that we don't lose sight of what our objective is. Our objective is to have members of the Alberta government, I don't care what party they're in. I need to understand that. I don't care what party is sitting in the legislature in Edmonton. I don't care if they're NDP, they're Liberal, or Green, or Purple, or UCP, or anything else. Their focus has to be on what their constituents' concerns are and what their job is, which is to represent Alberta and Albertans, not the federal government.
Jeff Cameron, question. Why are do I get a sense from reading the papers a lot that the natives are against an independent Alberta?
So, and for some might know, I've been doing work for Rebel Media lately too. I'm prolific. I write for a lot of folks. Rebel commissioned actually a very large poll a few months ago, and they used Main Street polling, you know, a sizable polling company, and they really wanted honest answers, and they were quite surprised when they came in, because they did find independence support in general to be a little lower than they'd hoped a few months ago, or thought, you know, because they're kind of independence leaning. But they found this outlier of 46% of the average Indigenous person supports independence. They weren't ready for that, and then when you start drilling down and thinking about it, it actually makes perfect sense. Because nobody's getting screwed by the system of Canada more than a poor devil living on one of those reserves, those racial enclaves, and they're locked in there under tyrants for chiefs and bureaucrats. They're ready for change. Now, it's hard to reach people on reserves. It's very difficult. They're gatekeepers. Those familiar with me know I'm going on another trial date at the end of August with Beiseker. I won't go into that whole mess. But that's for the whole point of exposing what's been going on there. But opponents to this love to try and blanket it and characterize it in legacy media as if some of the activists or chiefs or others within the Indigenous world really do speak for all the people on the ground. And they are very opposed to independence, but that's because they're all driving Escalades, doing very little work and making six-figure incomes. They don't want to shake the boat up here. Not every one of them. There's some good chiefs out there, a couple maybe. But that's where you get that misrepresentation. So that's where it's coming from. It's the people speaking for those groups, because the people on the ground don't have good voices if you're stuck in that socioeconomic mess on the reserve. So there's more support on the ground, though, than people realize. I think they're going to be a difficult group to get out to vote, though, to be honest.
When you think about the system that operates for the First Nations in Canada, they don't own anything. They're the very epitome of what Mark Carney has said: you will own nothing and be happy. Our Indigenous people own nothing, and everybody knows they're happy. That's what you have to look forward to under Carney.
I just want to add the way that in Quebec we don't pay attention too much to the First Nation, because we're basically the second nation, and the Métis the third nation, because they were birthed out of the French and the peaceful relationship we had with First Nation to be able to build up that country before the English came in. What I want to say, though, the way the PQ handled that very early in Quebec as a province, in 1978, René Lévesque recognized First Nation as nations. And as nations, he told them, we do have agreements for you to stay on these territory, so you're a nation within these territories. On the other side of that territory boundary, it's my nation. and he showed it in 1990 in Oka, when the city expanded a golf course, and the Mohawks say, well, this is our land. What did Quebecers did? Say, oh my goodness, you're right. No, we brought the army and say, stay on your side of the road. So this is how I believe we need to deal, mainly that we have very clear treaty that delimit very, very clear delimitations of what is in this treaty. And this treaty, if you look at the result, 135 years later, First Nation lives 19 years less than any other Albertan. They usually don't have potable water on their house. They live in crappy house that they don't own. They don't have the right to own any land on the land that was given to them. It's all federal government ownership. They are the highest crime rate, highest suicide rate, lowest colorized, highest, this is the result of the treaty that they want to hold wholeheartedly to. So I believe that they would have a way better deal sitting with us, Albertan, than respecting the treaty.
Yeah, Chris just brought this up quickly, and it's a great resource. This is something I've spoken of at a lot of these before too, because the treaties are all online. As Ben was saying, they're actually relatively simple documents, but most people just never bothered to read them or check them out. And Chris has this piece that was done, which covers the treaties and a good deal more within there, and understanding how the land sharing works and what the relationship is, and how it's an opportunity for First Nations. That's something we should watch. And I got to admit, as a crabby guy who's having difficulties with the Siksika, for example, I got to remember, we don't necessarily are adversaries, at least not with the people on the ground. We have common interests in this independence, and we could present those as opportunities. So check these out if you get a chance. Chris has all sorts of resources in the back to have a look at, and this covers a whole lot of that ground for you.
I just want to add to this gentleman's question. When you say we have to be leaders, and when you say we have to somehow put pressure on the UCP and the Premier, I have a suggestion. I make sure that I visit with, either through email or in person, our representatives. I say to them, it's really clear, I have made a promise to myself that I will not be voting for anyone who's not independent. I don't buy a pig in a poke. So I need to know what your position is. And I think what we have to do is we have to write our MLAs and even our MPs. If we really genuinely want our representatives to represent our beliefs and our culture, then we have to make darn good and sure those are the ones we vote for. We have no right to ask them if we don't ask them. I think we have to put the pressure on every single MLA right now, and even the Blaine Calkins of our federal representation.
I don't. We're sweating still. Bring up your toughest question. We want to have some fireworks here. So who can I bring the mic? Make him sweat.
Hi, my name's Diane, and I'm going to digress a little bit here. And my question is particularly for Mr. Trudeau, which I am so thankful he's here in Alberta. But with all of the things, I'll let you know right off the bat, I am not a separatist either, but I am a realist. And I want to know, with all the things that Quebec has done, and I'm going to go back to 2020 and the mandate that they brought out with COVID. Could Quebec, if Alberta did everything that Quebec has done, could they stop that from happening? Could Quebec stop that from the federal government?
You mean stop what they imposed themselves in 2020?
Yeah, like can they stop the mandate? Could they stop that? Could you say
like
could you save
mandate?
the people's jobs there that didn't want the vaccination? Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. But could they say that no, you can keep your job and you don't have to have that?
Well, so you have to understand that there's a reason I'm here and not in Quebec. Quebec is hyper-socialist, borderline communist. They use it's part of their social contract amongst themselves. The Premier of Quebec never been that popular than when he told people that there was a curfew, that they could stay home from, not go out from midnight to 5. His popularity like shoot up to the ceiling because Quebec French people are being basically hover over for 200 years. And then when the English, after the battle that they had with the English, basically the Englishmen, they did with the Catholic Church, take care of your crazy French. So what the Quebec Society did after Expo 67, there was a huge shift. So before Expo 67, I mean, the Cardinal of Montreal was was saying the rosary over the radio, and 97% of Quebecers were on their knees in their kitchen. The church was all powerful. They've done awful things, but they control the population. Today, what happens that Quebec replaced the church with its government. So all Quebecers expect the government to take decision for them, to play on their behalf. So when I say to do what Quebec does, I say let's use the same tools, not on the same way. This is not, I wouldn't see any of policies of Quebec being implemented, just transported here. So I believe it's important to understand that when I talk to that we need to do like Quebec, we need to use the same mechanism, but do it with our flavor. I mean, we're freedom seeker, we're freedom lovers. We have a different culture in Alberta, and we have to adapt these tools to our culture. So, no, if Quebec could have stopped any mandate and all that, I don't think they wanted. I believe they were comfortable having all these curfew and all these mandate, and give me 8 booster, please, if you tell me that it protects me.
Yeah. Well, that's where my concern comes in more than anything else is the freedom. We've lost that freedom because when I was a kid, we could choose whether we wanted that vaccination or not. It was up to you. Not to the government, not to anybody else. If you wanted it, fine. If you didn't want it, no. So that's what I'm thinking. Will that be protected if something happens and we decide to go that way and stay within Canada? Can we do that? As Albertans, can we refuse to take that and still keep our jobs?
You know what? A mandate is not a law. That's something that we were not really made fully aware of when all this was going on. A mandate requires an agreement between either two people or an organization and a group of people. A mandate is something you have to agree to. It's not a law. And when you look at the draconian method that the federal government used to try and encourage people to obey that mandate, those things are against Canadian law. So the whole point of independence is to create a country that is law-abiding and based on law. So we have a federal government right now that ignores the law. They, as a matter of fact, they just passed a bill that gave the federal government the right to ignore any law in the future, currently, or any law in the past. They can just, under the new law that they created, they can ignore any law in existence in the country. That's not what we want. So the answer to your question is, we don't really care what Quebec may or may not do, because in Alberta, we're a people who have a culture of get out of the way and let us do stuff. In Quebec, they have a culture of, well, I'll do this, what are you going to do for me? And that also is in existence in the Maritimes. It's in existence in many other parts of the country. But it's not existent in northern British Columbia, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, or in parts of northern Ontario. So the fact of the matter is that when we have our own country, we will have a country where we have the rule of law, which means the law must be obeyed, and it must be obeyed by everybody, including our political leaders.
Yeah.
If we went that way, like Quebec did, would we still have that right to not do that?
So we do have the right because, again, I'm advocating for us under the actual Constitution. Article 92A describe all the exclusivity of provincial intervention, and health, it's exclusively provincial. I will repeat, health is exclusively provincial. So it's a choice when we let Canada Health tell us what to do, because we can tell Canada Health, get away, go out of here, because health, it's strictly provincial. Why are we bounding to Ottawa for health? Because we give them 100% of our taxes, and they use that to negotiate. They say, if you don't apply that, we're going to retain $200 million for your health care. They have no right to put their nose in our health care to start with. Okay, and that can be applied within the actual Constitution. We don't need to change anything to do that.
So in other words, the people that got those shots that didn't want it just so they could keep the job, they didn't have to?
No, well, there was coercion. What we got to clarify is it was the province doing it to you, not Ottawa. Who was the thug? It was Alberta Health Services. Who put out the ones going door to door? Who put out the ones forcing the swabs? It was Alberta Health Service. Now, there was federal things too. That's when they crossed the line, because federally regulated industry such as truckers. That's where they could say, well, wait a minute, we can actually get truckers because they're crossing the border. And anywhere, airports, people coming in, we can force people to be quarantined because now it's a matter of custom. So everywhere where Ottawa could do it, they did do it. But the province was complicit. It was the province bringing in these mandates. It was the province with the Western Standard. We got reported by this idiot Markham Hislop every week to Alberta Health Services complaining because we were still using our newsroom all the way through. And Alberta Health Services would phone us and say, you guys aren't supposed to be in the office right now. And Derek would say, well, what are you going to do about it? Because he wanted a stunt. It's a media organization. So they just never did anything, which shows a lot too when you push back. But let's not forget, it was the province, and that's what we have to hold accountable. So if we don't go in the near future, we still are vulnerable to those sorts of actions again. But it's coercion. But at the same time, that coercion is very strong. It can put you out of work. It can keep you locked in your house. It can have you heavily fined. It can do a lot of things. It can shut down your business. But it was the province of Alberta. Never forget that. It was Alberta Health Services, not Ottawa Health Services.
Do you guys mind if I chime in quick? Yes. I have a hard time staying quiet, apparently. I just want to make sure that everybody understands what I'm seeing as an opportunity here. The reason why the government was able to do the things they did to us in Alberta is because in Canada, we don't live in a nation that upholds individual rights and freedoms over what the government wants as a default. And I can tell you that from experience because I went to jail for protesting what the government was doing, and I held my protest on my land peacefully, not breaking any laws, and I went to jail for that. So this is the opportunity. In Canada, we have a constitution that came from England. It wasn't written by us. It wasn't a group of people that said, we're going to do a by the people, for the people document that preserves our freedom for the foreseeable future. And then we're going to amend it and make sure that we can protect our freedoms so that individual rights and liberties and freedom is paramount in our society. We didn't do that. Some people in England sat down with representatives from Canada and they wrote a piece of legislation that was passed in English Parliament that was imposed on the Dominion of Canada. And that legislation was the British North America Act, and it was basically a set of rules and regulations that they said we had to follow. So the opportunity that Alberta has, and any other province that chooses to take this path, is to, for the first time in Canadian history, have the people decide the rules for those that wish to govern us. And I, for one, would not default to saying that, well, we're going to affirm that you have these rights and freedoms, we're going to write them all down, and then we're going to include a thing in there that says, well, you have them unless it's demonstrably justified that you shouldn't have them, and then we're going to arrest pastors for holding church services. Then we're going to arrest restaurateurs for serving hamburgers. Then we're going to drag mothers out of a hockey arena for not wearing a mask. This is the opportunity. And all of the other stuff, the taxes and the pipelines and politicians, it pales in comparison to the opportunity for a people to answer a question on self-determination and build their own document that protects their individual freedoms. That's the opportunity we have. And all of those things that you mentioned, specifically, you know, what they did to us during COVID, all of those things would be almost impossible if the table was turned and the default was rights and freedoms over what the government wants.
Okay, so my question is, what advice do you have for people who want to be a slave in Mark Carney's New World Order?
I mean, I can't come from the mind of a masochist. I don't know. Yeah, you know, pad your butt because you're going to get spanked a lot, slave. I guess, you know, part of what you're getting at, though, is that those people I like to talk about, though, who identify as the 20-30% who are going to be elbows up forever Canadian, love the status quo, for whatever reason that may be, and they're just never, ever going to change. There's no advice I could offer them that they would enjoy or accept. And as fun as it is to poke at them or get frustrated with them or confront them, our time is usually still better spent trying to go for the ones who are still in the middle. The slaves will always be the slaves. There's just going to be that human nature for some people, I think. Advice-wise, I don't know. I hope they slip and hit their head in the shower and learn about how to stand up for themselves at some point.
Dennis again. I had the privilege of going to Ottawa last couple of weeks for National Day of Prayer, and something special there. I'll spare the details there, but one of the things they told some people there was, I first asked them, like, do you agree that there's some bad laws coming from Ottawa? Well, duh, we all know that. That's like, I think 90% of people would agree with that. And I said, Alberta, if they get the shot, I said, Alberta will take the shot. And I believe Alberta may be the tool that's gonna perhaps turn on Fix Canada. And Alberta may be the only province that has the leverage to do it. And I said, and they're willing to use it too. And so anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but I just see that our province has a bigger cause than just this effort for independence. I think there's going to be a whole shift coming down across the prairies and hopefully even all the way to the east, but we'll see.
I don't disagree with that. I'm going to divert for a little bit. Under Jason Kenney, we had a referendum on equalization that got 61.7% 7% of Albertans saying we don't want it anymore. So what happened was during a debate with Keith, I think it was, somebody asked Jason Kenney, "What did you do with the information you got from that referendum? How did you take the will of the people of Alberta as expressed to you and exercise a decision in favor of that will?" And he said, "Well, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister." Well, that sounds like a memorandum of understanding to me. Anyway, he wrote a letter to the and then he was asked, "Well, what happened with that result?" And he said, "Well, he didn't respond." And we have a history in Canada of the government not responding to people's desires and wishes, all the way back to Louis Riel's speech when he was addressing the jury that was about to convict him of sedition and treason and everything else, which got him hung. His point was that the federal government and the ministers not only didn't respond positively to requests from the Northwest Territories at that time, but they didn't respond at all. And he also said the government of the Northwest Territories did the same thing. So nothing's changed. So when former Premier Kenney was asked, "Well, what happened after you didn't get a response from the Prime Minister?" He said, "Well, I wrote a letter to all the premiers asking for a constitutional conference. And what happened? They didn't respond. So my point is this: nothing is going to change until we change it. Nothing will change unless we change it. Right now, we have a provincial government that goes on bended knee to Ottawa and says, what will it take from us for you to give us some things that we need in order to expand our economy and provide more support for Albertans? And then she gets told, well, how about spending $20 billion on carbon capture? If you do that, maybe we'll give you a pipeline. Which is exactly what happened. That's how they got the agreement for the twinning of the TMX. And then the next question was, well, how are you going to get BC to agree to that new pipeline? Well, no problem. We'll just share your royalties with BC. We need a provincial government. I don't care whether they're conservative, liberal, NDP, blue, green, black, or purple. We need a government in Alberta which is for Alberta, that understands if you want to stay in Canada, fine. I won't quarrel with that. You can do that if you want. But let's do the things that we can under the laws that exist right now. Let's do like Quebec and say, when Ottawa sticks their nose into what we have a right and an obligation to do, we tell them to take off, just like any other Canadian. Get out of our business. Let's do like Quebec does when BC says, or let's do like Saskatchewan did, when BC says that we want some consideration for moving your potash through our ports, then no problem, we'll just send it through Seattle. Let's do that. Let's do like Quebec does. And when they say they want money from our oil royalties to move oil, then fine, let's move it through the states. Let's make the agreement with the adjoining states, and then do like Quebec does and go to Ottawa and say, here, sign this. We can do that. Now, personally, I'm with Chris. I believe that independence for Alberta is not only necessary, but it's inevitable. It will occur. So let's make it occur sooner rather than later, okay?
And we have to remember that sovereignty is taken, not negotiated. And when Quebec make a decision, they do it and they ask forgiveness never. If you're not happy with what we decided, sue us. And if we get a judgment against us that we don't like, we're gonna keep on doing it until you change your mind. And that's the attitude we need for our politicians. This is the type of politician we need in this province to make stuff change if separation is not happening. So whether it's the UCP, I'm with John on that, whether it's the UCP or anybody else that will promise to work for Albertan, only for Alberta and for Alberta future, this is where our vote should go. I believe that we're stuck in a double party system because of one person, which is Daniel Smith, and we can change that.
We've got an online question, and Chris will read it.
Okay, the question is, throughout history, people came to Canada for its freedoms and the ability to be safe, create a family and a future. They escaped communism and have fought wars to ensure our freedom. Now they threaten our very faith, freedom, and our rights. The New World Order is coming. What is there to stop it? And just before you gents answer this, I do want to point out that some people believe that the idea of this New World Order is a conspiracy theory. All they have to do is just watch a press release from Mark Carney while he was in China, talking about working with China to usher in the New World Order.
I would say my position on that is twofold. First, you look at all the policies that Canada, the newer one that Canada is passing, which is basically anti-human. You see that they pass the same policy in Australia, New Zealand, UK, France, Germany. So definitely there's a concerted effort to normalize policies across Western countries. I believe that Canada has the opportunity to be the outlier as a province with that just because of our constitution. I believe that we have, under our constitution, the right as a province to protect ourselves from a lot of that if we understand the right that we have, and I believe we don't. So my position on that, again, separation, yes, it's like the ideal situation, but beside that, there's ways that we can shield ourselves just by asserting and be true Canadians, saying we will do what our constitution tells us to do, and we'll take care of our health without Ottawa, we'll take care of our education without Ottawa. We won't respect whatever Ottawa signed because we have the right not to respect what Ottawa signed, and we'll do our own stuff according to what our constitution allows us to do.
So immigration in itself, as I said, a lot of people came and built the country to get away from terrible places, and that hasn't changed. A lot of immigrants are coming to Alberta and Canada for the right reasons and for good reasons, and from every part of the country. The problem we have is mass immigration. That's the problem. Uncontrolled immigration, not being selective with who or how many from some more or less compatible cultures that we can integrate and deal with. But I don't agree that we have the constitutional ability to do much about it. I understand Quebec asserts itself quite well in having being at the table and choosing who's going to come in to a degree with the federal government and who would land in Quebec, and to try and prioritize people coming from French-speaking countries. But the thing is, once a person lands in Canada, there's nothing to stop them from moving province to province, wherever they may go. And there's nothing a province can do about that. We can't provincially put up a wall and say, you can't come from Ontario to here after you've landed in Canada. Once you're in Canada, you're in Canada. One of the things that we are doing within our authority, in a sense, though, was one of the things that's going on the right track from the Smith government, because we haven't beaten up on her a lot, for good reason, a lot of things. But some of those things talking about, well, we don't have to make it comfortable for those immigrations who look at this place as a one to take advantage of, to be parasitic from, and so on, where you have non-citizens collecting benefits or taking advantage of health care or the education system. We're under no obligation to pay those for these people. They can pay for their own or go the hell back. Full immigrants, different story. And if they're moving towards it, so be it. These are measures we can do. I like where they're going there, because at least it's telling those who don't want to work, who just want to consume, this might not be the best province for you. Maybe you should kind of move on to Toronto or Vancouver then, if you want that sort of thing. But if you really want to deal with immigration in general, we got to get the hell out of the Federation. There's no other way.
I just want to point out that we don't have a federation, we have a confederation. I go right back to my original statement when I first spoke tonight. We have a country of equals. Confederation, a confederation is defined as a loose association of independent states. And our Constitution, the BNA, recognizes that fact. We are a loose association of independent states. We have our own rights, our own obligations, and our own concerns. We need to stand up and take them, like Quebec did. We can do it. They did it. Why not?
And about the immigration, again, we can choose who we give driver's license to. We can choose who we give health care to. We can choose who we give social service to. We can choose who we give schooling to. So, like Cory says, that anyway, I have disagree with what Cory was saying in terms that we won't be able to control. No, what Quebec does a very strict control on their immigration. And where they went a bit astray when they had a problem is that the second most spoken language in the Arabic world is French, and the immigration in Quebec is based on linguistic stuff. So they ended up getting a lot of Islamic people in their province, and this is what pushed them to put some stuff that like in Bill 9, why the Bloc did supported the removal of the religious protection. It's because of the Muslim in Quebec. It's very clear. So, but they control very, very well, and I believe that we could do the same if we want to do so. In fact, I heard Minister Drishen, Minister of Transport here, talking about a 2 years obligation when an immigrant comes from another country before getting another class and class 5. So they spend at least 2 winters in this driving in our condition before getting any other than a class 5. So I support that type of initiative.
Okay, the last question, I guess, for tonight. Oh, where?
There's that lady there.
Oh, no. I saw one finger, so I will have to give you the mic.
We have a trucking business in Alberta, and I am just curious about, like, if we were managing to do this or whatever, how those laws would change, because I first-handedly watched a person walk in. He was turned down 12 times for a driver's license. We went into one of those driver's places, and he paid $200 and some, and they walked him in, they walked him out, and he walked out of there. I mean, like... And our company, because of all of this that's going on, we have had so much legislation. Like, we haul produced water, so it's really, really hard. We can't find drivers. You have to have like all this like tons of experience and everything else, or we have to pay suicide rates for our insurance and everything. And I'm like, it's just made it super difficult to operate. And I'm just wondering, like, if this comes about, if there's somehow that we can kind of manage that situation better.
Well,
I guess the question is about how we're going to get staff.
We don't need independence, too. This is fully in the government's hands, and they're screwing it up today. So we need to stop those places that are farming out driver's licenses to unqualified, dangerous people. That's provincial and federal, because trucking's federally regulated as well. I mean, independence-wise, if we don't manage to get it fixed before we become independent, then let's fix it after. But this is something that we should be screaming at our elected officials about.
It just makes it so expensive, too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, we're paying almost double sometimes. Well, sometimes it is double for our employees, because they have to be so specific in this industry. You know what I mean? Because anybody can walk in and anybody can do it.
Yeah, and it's like the diploma farms that people are abusing as well to be able to bypass the immigration system and things like that. We have the mechanisms here, though. We just have to crack down on it. Some of it's just straight out linguistic. I mean, I saw a picture of an accident recently where there was a sign that was saying, you know, no long vehicles, no extended ones can make this road. It's impassable. And there was the trucker who was stuck on the hairpin curve who went off the road because he couldn't read bloody English. How is he operating something that big and he can't speak the language of the place that what the road signs are? We can fix that. We just need the will. That's the hard part. But independent or not, it's a very valid problem.
And I just want to say the insurance business is a bit of my soapbox here. I think it's ridiculous in this province that we don't have any company producing insurance products. So basically, for all of our car home insurance, the premium all goes either to Quebec or to Vancouver. And I believe the only insurance company in this province that produce insurance product is Peace Hills Insurance, and they're limited, they're small, they are Aboriginal owned, but I personally ask my broker to get Peace Hill Insurance on my own stuff, but I believe that an insurance problem, even for the industrial building, I have a friend who have a big industrial site, and he decided to auto-insure him because he was insured by La Prudentielle in Quebec, and they quintuple his premium in the past 6 years, and he has nothing to do against it. So another solution is to promote the creation of Alberta product and stopping farming our stuff and sending our money to Quebec and BC.
I've got a question more back. As you're an entrepreneur, I think you have thought about solutions. What are the solutions for that?
Well, I really honestly believe that there needs to be some kind of a control system that's put in here where they are watching what the heck is going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you cannot just bring people in here, and like I say, like, I'm like obviously the province, there's no borders, but I'm like, somehow, like you said, like with the driver's licenses, like, who are we giving these driver's licenses to? And I'm like, an Alberta driver's license is an Alberta driver's license. can these people speak English? Are they fit to do this job? Do they have experience in any way, shape, or form? Or, you know, like, it's just really unfair to the people that are out there doing a legitimate job, you know? Like...
By the way, the Alberta government last year shut down 34, mainly in the Edmonton, Wetaskiwin area. They shut down 34 inspection and driver's license for Class 1, Class 3, owned by a certain people.
There was a gentleman behind me who mentioned the WEF. And the New World Order is the way our Prime Minister prefers to refer to it. I don't want to just sort of slide over that, because I think it's really important for us to get another message out, and that's this message. A vote for Carney and his Liberals is a vote for the WEF and the New World Order. And there's proof of that, because one of the two of the two moves that he made as soon as very shortly after getting in there, and it's already done, is in Canada, we have a privy council with the clerk, and we have the Governor General. Those are the only two checks on our Prime Minister. That's in the Constitution. And that's from the old British days where they wanted to still control Canada, and they were always British. Usually royalty, like the lords and whatnot. What he did is he brought one of his he's got two ladies in those positions. One of them is very closely tied to both, and one of them has done things like presented 3 talks at the New World Order. So what he's done is he's brought in his people. They will not oppose him. A vote for Carney right now is a vote for the New World Order. He himself has said it. There are quotes. I think it was the National, what was it called? Not National Geographic. It was National something else. But there are actual videos of him saying it. We will follow the policies of the WEF, and we will be part of the New World Order. He hopes to be one of the leaders there. That's my thought. So when you're talking to people, make sure they know that their vote is not for Canada. It's whether we want to be ruled by people who don't live here, probably don't speak our own language, and have nothing in common with us. Their vote is for the New World Order if they choose Canada.
I find that really, really interesting. And it seems to me that the New World Order and the WEF is really a promising thing. But I think we should take the steps, like you talk about having, you know, people who rule over you from a distant place. I think we should make an experiment of some kind. We should figure out, you know, we should figure out how to create a society, like a microcosm of our society, that has nothing, no property, doesn't own anything, and is ruled by a faraway outfit that has no concern with their particular community or anything else, and try it out and see how it works. We've never done that, have we? Alberta, Ottawa, Alberta reservations, you name it. That is what we're faced with when we look at WEF and the New World Order.
Any last statement, gentlemen? Well, I think we need to round it off. For the gentleman in front, I think what I should do if I was you were talking about your wife, on the end of the month, let's say you have $300 in your wallet and you say, honey, let's go, and we're going to have this wonderful high tea. You get in your car and your car is empty. You need to have a gas, but there's still $300. You gave it to your wife. Well, we need to drive to the gas station, fill it up. How much money is there left over for that high tea? So let's do it that way, and then maybe she will find out that there's no high tea, but there's only McDonald's burger left over. Ladies and gentlemen, I will thank you for our speakers, Cory Morgan, John Riel, and Ben Trudeau. I wanted to thank you all for being here. That's a huge effort. For everybody who's watching online, thank you for doing so. If you support, please go to letstalkalberta.com. There are loads of information as well as letstalkalberta@gmail.com for your donations. On the back on this hallway are trifles and all kinds of stuff that you can bring home, share with your friends. There's all kinds of information about natives and the top 10 questions that we get most asked. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, the speakers of the night.
Well, I'm trying something different tonight, so let's see if this works. You can hear me. I know you can hear me because I see the little green lights down there. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us again for a Let's Talk Alberta event in Beiseker, Alberta. Every single time we do one of these events, I learn more and more and more. And I hope you do too. We did our best to answer all of the questions that were in the comments. Hopefully we got to all of them. I noticed there's some questions that are trying to lure me into an unending question. If you have some very deep questions on specific legal things, ChatGPT can be your absolute best friend, and you can answer a lot of those questions yourself. For the rest of it, I do write blogs. I try and post as much of the stuff as I think about on my website, whistlestoptruckstop.ca. You can find just about any answer to those questions there. In addition, at letstalkalberta.com, if you notice, there's an AI chatbot thing there. Now, while it's not perfect, if you ask it a question, it will answer, and it will look at some of the things I've written, some of the stuff on the website. It'll look at some, like the Constitution. It's got a knowledge database of these things. And it can try, it'll do its best to answer the questions based on the material that we published. So try that. Other than that, please attend an event and ask in person. That's always the best way to do it. Have a great night, everybody, and we will see you at the next Let's Talk Alberta event, which is somewhere soon, I think. I know we're in Lethbridge soon. We're going to be in Grand Prairie, Vermilion, a bunch of other ones. I'll have to try and post it in the comments after the fact. Good night.